Eskimo medicine man, exorcising evil spirits from a sick boy. Nushagak, Alaska, 1924. The fall of Saigon. An American punches a Vietnamese man in the face as he tries to close the doorway of an airplane, overloaded with refugees seeking to flee Nha Trang, which was being taken over by North Vietnam in 1975. Many of the planes had designated passengers for the C-17 flights out of Kabul, but due to the chaos that arose with the awaiting crowd, it was not possible. The plane evacuations got 50,500 people out. A man having his nose measured during Aryan race determination tests under Nazi Germany's Nuremberg laws that was applied to determine whether a person was considered a Jew, 1940. Ronald Clark O'Brien is escorted from a courtroom after being convicted of murdering his son with Halloween candy laced with cyanide. It is the only known instance of someone poisoning others with Halloween candy. Ronald was later nicknamed the man who ruined Halloween, Texas, 1975. The crime was aimed directly at his children and their friends, not at trick-or-treaters, to collect his son's life insurance policy. At the age of 39, he was executed in 1984. One of the last photos of Tsar Nicholas II, he is in captivity following the February Revolution, March 1917, when the Bolsheviks overthrew the provisional government. The Bolsheviks were not in favor of the Romanovs, the family that had ruled Russia for 300 years. A Spanish police officer guards the wreckage after two Boeing 747 airliners collided and burned that killed 583 people on the runway of Tenerife Los Rodeos Airport in the Canary Islands, Spain, 1977. The aircraft had taken off without a takeoff clearance. The pilot was impatient and decided to take off even though he wasn't cleared to use the runway. A man in an electric chair at Sing Sing Correctional Facility, New York, one of 614 condemned to death in this chair, around 1900. His name is Arthur Mayhew. He killed a 70-year-old man during a robbery and took $200. His conviction was based on the confession of a lookout friend who later tried to recant that confession. The judge refused a new trial, and Arthur remained his innocence until his death. When the atomic bomb detonated over Hiroshima the morning of August 6, 1945, a resident was seated on the stone steps outside of Sumitomo Bank, but seconds later, they were incinerated in the boiling light. In their place was a shadow that served as a horrifying relic of their final moments. The surface of the explosion burned 10,000 degrees Fahrenheit, and anything within 1,600 feet of its blast zone was incinerated in an instant. The mask alleged to have been worn by killer Edward Pynell, aka the Beast of Jersey, when he committed a number of heinous crimes in Jersey, November 1971. He would plan his attacks, sometimes years in advance. He only served 20 years in prison because of good behavior. His crimes went on from 1957 to 1970. He terrorized his small community, breaking into homes and purposefully terrified his victims with his costume and planned attacks. Officers only caught him when he ran a red light one day in 1971, and they happened to see his mask sitting right there in his car. Former Italian Prime Minister Aldo Moro, as a hostage of the Red Brigades. He was later murdered, April 19, 1978. The Red Brigades wanted to exchange him with some prisoners. However, he was killed because he was one of the promoters of the so-called Compromesso Storico, a pact that would have allowed the Italian Communist Party to be part of the future governments. The government refused to negotiate with the kidnappers and let them kill Moro. According to some sources, many high government officials even knew where he was held prisoner. On May 9, 1978, Moro's body was found. The aftermath of the Mont Blanc Tunnel fire in 1999. A truck caught fire while driving through the Mont Blanc Tunnel between France and Italy, resulting in the death of 39 people. Some individuals tried to reach safety in the emergency shelters within the tunnel, but tragically lost their lives there as emergency services were unable to reach them in time. A Turkish bride after her wedding in Vranja, Serbia, 1919. Her face covered with gilt leaf for her wedding. It is the custom among the Turks in this town to cover the bride's face with gilt leaf, giving her the appearance of age. After this is taken off the bride, she must put on a veil and never remove it except in the presence of her husband. PEP, the dog who was sentenced to life in prison for killing Pennsylvania governor's cat, 1924. Though the dog was sent to the penitentiary, instead of being a prisoner, he was used as a therapy dog for prisoner rehabilitation. B-25s are pictured flying past Mount Vesuvius in Italy as lava and ash spews from the top of the volcano. The eruption killed 57 as it destroyed the village of San Sebastiano and San Jorge in March 1944, while Allied forces were battling for supremacy in the skies. Inajiro Asanuma, chairman of the Japan Socialist Party, is attacked by 17-year-old Otoya Yamaguchi, a right-wing ultranationalist, during a televised political debate, 1960. Astronaut Gus Grissom's flight suit, after the Apollo 1 fire that killed him and astronauts Ed White and Roger B. Chaffee on January 27, 1967. They died from CO poisoning and were covered in third-degree burns. The suits were mostly nylon, hence the damage. NASA changed to a silicone-based cloth after the fire. Blondie was Adolf Hitler's German Shepherd, a gift as a puppy from Martin Bormann in 1941. Hitler kept Blondie even after his move into the Führer bunker in January 1945. Hitler would later test one of his cyanide capsules on her to make sure they worked before he used it. He did not want her to fall into the hands of the Soviets. An Algerian resistant, Zulika Uday, moments after her arrest by the French army, tortured for 10 days and got thrown from a helicopter. She organized campaigns to raise money and provide medicines and supplies for the Liberation Front before becoming a fighting squad leader. In 1984, a farmer declared having found and buried a body of a handcuffed woman during the revolution, which eventually turned out to be hers. North Vietnamese pull U.S. airman John McCain out of a lake in 1967. He had ejected from his plane after it had been shot down, and he broke his right leg and both arms while briefly being knocked unconscious from the force. He was held captive by the Viet Cong for over 5 years, enduring harsh treatment and torture. He was released in 1973 as part of the Paris Peace Accords, which aimed to establish peace in Vietnam and end U.S. involvement in the war. British Army bomb defusal specialist draws a crowd as he inspects a suspicious package during the pro-CCP riots in Hong Kong, 1967. Many of the roadside and petrol bombs used during the riots were made in pro-Chinese Communist Party schools. Jarnail Singh Bhindranwale sitting in the center, with armed Sikh militants in the Golden Temple, a few days before the Indian Army stormed the complex, killing him and the majority of his followers. Amritsar, Punjab, May, 1984. The automobile crash that killed American actor James Dean on September 30, 1955 in Cholame, California. Dean purchased the car in early September 1955 while preparing to compete in races. He was driving to a race in Salinas when he collided with another vehicle. A bare-chested man in front of the Soviet forces in Bratislava during the Warsaw Pact invasion of Czechoslovakia in August 1968. A Serbian farmer continues his work as NATO bombs former Yugoslavia during Operation Allied Force, 1999. The smoke in the background comes from the Pančevo petrochemical plant, located north of Belgrade. The environmental and health impact was immense. The main stand engulfed in flames in the Bradford City Stadium fire, which killed 56 people, May 1985. The damaged wooden stand was due for demolition before the Saturday match against Lincoln City. A discarded cigarette, which apparently fell through the floorboards, set fire to litter and debris below the stand. The entire stand was on fire within 4 minutes due to the windy conditions. The coronation ceremony of Emperor Jean Bedel Bokassa of Central Africa, 1977, which was funded by France. The coronation would have cost about $25 million, a quarter of the country's GDP. He was eventually overthrown in September 1979 with French support, following April protests by elementary school students required to buy expensive uniforms with his image on them. A U.S. Army soldier and a Mexican soldier guarding their respective sides of the border between the United States and Mexico on International Street in Nogales, Arizona and Nogales, Sonora during the Mexican Revolution, around 1910s. Citizens duck for cover as British soldiers open fire on those taking part in Catholic Civil Rights March, killing 14 people. Northern Ireland, January 1972. Many of the victims were shot while fleeing from the soldiers, and some were shot while trying to help the wounded. Other protesters were injured by rubber bullets or batons, and 2 were run down by army vehicles.